Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, celebrating the holiday with fresh local produce, quality meats, and seasonal favorites. Shop in-store or let Safeway do the shopping this holiday season with free curbside pickup using the Safeway app.
It's Friday. If this is your weekend to find a Christmas tree to chop down or to kick off your ski season, drive slowly and check for road closures. Another snowstorm is now moving into the high country. A winter storm warning for the Central Mountains starts tonight, and flakes could be falling there all weekend. I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, Colorado's job market is a mystery right now.
I still think the data are pretty significantly impaired, and I'm hesitant to rely on them.
You'll hear why even the experts are stuck guessing about our economy. Then, efforts to end homelessness could face a huge setback starting next month.
Thousands of formerly homeless people could end up being evicted and living back on the streets.
How a federal funding change could push vulnerable people out of their housing. And as a state senator is laid to rest today, we remember how she changed workplace culture at the Capitol.
I think Faith showed tremendous courage and leadership at a time when it wasn't easy to come forward.
It's Friday, December 5th. Here's the news in Colorado today. If you're hunting for a job or know someone who's out of work, you probably have strong feelings about the state of Colorado's job market. But here's something a bit wild. The people responsible for tracking the official labor picture don't really know what's going on with it. CPR's Sarah Mulholland is here to explain. Sarah, why is it so hard right now to get a clear picture of Colorado's job market?
So it comes down to data quality. Colorado rolled out a new unemployment insurance computer system in 2023, and it introduced major errors in the way employers reported job and wage data. The problem was so serious that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics actually stopped publishing Colorado's numbers earlier this year because they didn't trust them.
I do remember your reporting on that from earlier this year.
Yes, that's right. So the state says that the system is fixed now, but experts who analyze the data for the legislature say they still don't believe the new numbers line up with older, more reliable data. So year-over-year comparisons don't really mean much right now.
These data problems are specific to our computer systems in Colorado. Can we then just look to the federal government for a more reliable sense of what's happening here?
Actually, we really can't. So the federal government tracks job numbers in two ways. They do a monthly survey of employers, which gives them an immediate snapshot, but it's a fairly imprecise one. And then they come back later and use data provided by the states to revise that estimate into something more precise. The problem is, in Colorado's case, like I was just talking about, the information itself might not be valid, and so it's hard to know if those revised job numbers are real or not.
Whether they're real or not, what are they reporting for our jobs numbers here?
Well, the difference between the monthly survey estimates and the revised state numbers was huge. According to data from Colorado, the state may have added 51,000 fewer jobs than originally reported during the 12-month period ending in March. And I have to say it wasn't just Colorado where the final numbers changed a lot. Nationwide, it was the biggest downward revision in U.S. history. But even so, Colorado's drop was the biggest in percentage terms.
A big percentage drop. Does that mean the jobs picture here is bad?
It sounds like it. And yet, Greg Sabetsky is the chief economist for Colorado's Legislative Council staff. He dug into income tax data to try to figure out what's happening with jobs. And he said that data doesn't show the kind of collapse that the revised job numbers suggest. Sabetsky says it's just really hard to know what's happening right now because of the data problems.
I would just say our expectations for the economy are largely not rooted in these data because we don't take them very seriously right now. I still think the data are pretty significantly impaired, and I'm hesitant to rely on them.
The numbers we do have suggest that job growth is down in Colorado. What could be driving that?
Well, one factor is the tech sector. So Colorado has a higher concentration of technology jobs than the national average, and tech layoffs across the country in the past couple of years hit us especially hard. Construction is also weaker here than in many other states. So, Bazi, the data is questionable. But what we can say is that some industries are slowing, others are flat. And as a result, Coloradans are uneasy about their job prospects and hoping for more stability.
Fingers crossed. CPR's Sarah Mulholland. Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Sarah's reporting is part of a CPR News series into the shifting economic picture for Colorado. You can find links to those stories in our show notes. Thousands of Coloradans could end up back on the streets starting this winter after the Trump administration makes changes to federal housing policy. New rules and funding cuts at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, are set to take effect in January, and it'll have a major impact on long-term housing availability for some of the most vulnerable people in our state. Denverite's Kyle Harris is here now. Kyle, can you help us understand exactly what's changing in the new year?
Sure. So, big picture, this is part of the Trump administration's push to repeal what are known as housing first policies for people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. For years, HUD has funded permanent supportive housing initiatives all across the country. This is affordable housing that comes with services to help people with disabilities. The idea behind this housing is that people who cannot work and who don't make enough money to pay rent on their own can have lifelong support. This includes people with hard-to-manage and serious mental health issues. And for years, the consensus has been this kind of housing really works. But under the new HUD guidelines, the focus for funding now will be temporary interventions like outreach workers, group shelters, and transitional programs.
So more money then for that immediate short-term help rather than long-term housing. What is the expected impact on people here in Colorado?
Okay, so national groups say about 170,000 people could lose their homes as a result of these changes. Here in Colorado, the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless estimates that it could lose funding for about 800 permanent supportive housing units. That's about 3/4 of their inventory. And the coalition said another 1,300 households across the state could also be impacted. And as you mentioned, that means thousands of formerly homeless people could end up being evicted and living back on the streets. This includes children, military veterans, and many people with disabilities.
Is there anything an organization like the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless can do to save that long-term housing?
So the coalition's trying to figure that out. Raising enough money from the private sector to keep permanent supportive housing running feels nearly impossible, they say. The coalition's considering moving some households from permanent housing to transitional housing, but the reality is there just isn't enough to go around. And unlike their current situations, people will have to comply with treatment for drug use and mental health issues, even to qualify for transitional housing.
Can they convert current permanent housing units into traditional housing to help meet the new need?
It's a great question that they're trying to figure out. So there's a clash of federal rules here. The Housing First buildings the coalition operates were funded by the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. And there's a requirement there. They can't be used for anything other than permanent affordable housing for people making a certain income.
So basically, the buildings are required to offer only one kind of housing, but now the federal money to operate them is going away.
Exactly. It's really a rock and a hard place situation.
We have been seeing these big funding changes by the Trump administration be met by lawsuits. Is that likely to happen here?
Well, it is happening. So Colorado and nearly 20 other states sued the federal government last week, trying to block the funding change. And the coalition joined a separate suit filed by the nonprofit National Alliance to End Homelessness. They argue Congress said the money must go to permanent supportive housing and that HUD can't just rewrite the rules on its own. The timeline for these changes is incredibly tight, and if the HUD changes do move forward in January as expected, advocates for housing first policies warn that it won't take long for people to be living back on the streets, in group shelters, or rotating through the county jails, and advocates fear more people will die.
Sounds like a tough problem is just about to become even tougher. Denverite's Kyle Harris, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
At the height of the Me Too era in 2017, a state lawmaker came forward with allegations against a colleague.
I used all the tools women have to say no. I laughed it off. I told him to go home to his girlfriend. I said no directly. Nothing worked.
Then Representative Faith Winter, a Democrat, became the galvanizing force that led to the expulsion of another Democratic lawmaker over his conduct. Winter died in a car crash the night before Thanksgiving. She was about to serve her final year at the State House as a senator. Today, lawmakers, family, and friends will gather for her funeral at the Capitol. CPR's Benta Birkeland is here to talk about why Winter was key to changing workplace culture under the Gold Dome. Benta, can you take us back to November of 2017 when Winter first spoke about an incident involving that fellow lawmaker?
Yes, she first talked to me about it for a story on harassment at the Capitol. And Winter said Democratic Representative Steve Lebsock had made unwanted sexual advances and used vulgar language, and that he tried to force her to leave a party with him the year before. And this had a big impact when she spoke out about her experiences with Lebsock. She filed a formal complaint, and this gave other women the courage to come forward.
When Lebsock was expelled, it was a big deal. It was only the second time in the history of the state legislature that lawmakers have voted to remove a member.
Yes, that's right. This process was very combative, contentious, and difficult, and uncertain. Lebsock, he didn't respond to a text seeking comment this week for this, but he vehemently denied the allegations against him. He went on offense. At one point, he distributed a 28-page document to every member in the House, and it had uncorroborated, sexually explicit allegations about Winter. She talked about that in an interview with Colorado Matters.
He repeatedly called me a liar in the media, and he created an awful YouTube video designed to humiliate and embarrass me.
But she didn't back down. And since her death, many current and former colleagues have told me how significant it was that she did take a stand.
I think Faith showed tremendous courage and leadership at a time when it wasn't easy to come forward with acts of misconduct in the workplace, particularly at the Capitol.
That's former Republican Representative Cole Wist. He said the Capitol had been the site of some truly, quote, boorish behavior.
Was the effort to expel Lebsock widely supported?
Eventually, yes. Democrats were lined up behind it for the most part. But what's interesting is initially it did not seem like there were enough votes to expel Lebsock. Democrats needed at least 8 Republicans to reach the required threshold. Going into the vote, Republicans publicly said they weren't going to support the expulsion. And it wasn't necessarily because they didn't believe the women's claims or what Winter was saying. Some Republicans didn't think the allegations against Lebsock rose to the level of taking this dramatic action and removing someone put in office by the voters.
What was it that ended up turning the tide in this case?
It was Cole Wist, who you heard from earlier. On the day of the expulsion vote, he said he believed Lebsock had retaliated against Winter and other accusers, and then that rose to the level of expulsion. His decision to say that flipped quite a few Republican votes.
With 52 yes votes, 9 no votes, and 4 excused. H.R. 1005 is passed.
Benta, how has that whole ordeal had a lasting impact at the State House?
It put a lot of scrutiny on workplace conduct. It led to a lot of reporting and other investigations. And Winter successfully changed policies for filing complaints at the Capitol to try to make it more transparent and a fair process. It also set up requirements for everyone to go through harassment training. And even though the Capitol is by no means a perfect workplace now, I've reported on incidents just in the past year, it's still very clear that Winter coming forward had a big ripple effect.
And her fight against harassment was certainly a defining moment of her time at the State House. What are some of the other things she's being remembered for?
She was a big champion of transit. She sponsored some of the legislature's reproductive rights bills and was a huge supporter of an effort to establish a government-run paid family leave program. Voters approved that in 2020. But Winter did struggle in recent years as well. She had an incident where she was visibly intoxicated at a public meeting with constituents. She apologized and went into treatment for substance use disorder. But when I talked to her colleagues in the weeks since her death about everything she accomplished, they emphasized what they'll remember about her: her perseverance, her kindness, her work ethic. One former legislative aide told me, the word that comes to mind when she thinks of Faith Winter is groundbreaking.
CPR Public Affairs reporter Benta Birkeland. Thanks, Benta.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Colorado Today. It's the time of year for supporting Colorado nonprofits at coloradogives.org. If you donate right now, it'll count toward a $10,000 matching challenge. To help us unlock that money, make your Colorado Gives Day contribution today. Again, that's coloradogives.org. I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, celebrating the holiday with fresh local produce, quality meats, and seasonal favorites. Shop in-store or let Safeway do the shopping this holiday season with free curbside pickup using the Safeway app.